Hello and welcome to the third episode of the Hooligan Report. I'm your host as always, SM, and joining me today is the absolutely brilliant Cooksen.
What's up, y'all?
And joining us for the first time we have Flameboy.
G'day, SM, Cooksen.
Now guys, let's get straight into it. It's been an absolutely outstanding start to the World Cup, probably one of the best we've had. With only 17 matches played, we've already had 49 goals, which is almost 3 a match. Müller leads the way with 3 goals, while Neymar, Benzema, Robin and RVP have 2 each. What are your highlights so far? Maybe we'll start with Flameboy.
Yeah, it has been a pretty good World Cup so far, as you said, and we'll go back right to the first match with Brazil taking on Croatia. And for me, as a Chelsea fan, seeing Oscar play the way he did was pretty inspiring. He obviously scored that goal at the end, but just his general play and I don't know how many chances he created, but it would have been close to half a dozen, 7 or 8. So that was a highlight for me. And then you look at the other things, Netherlands, Spain, a lot of hype around that match, and Van Persie's header was pretty stunning to get the game back to 1-1. Messi's goal, a lot of talk about that. I know Peter Drury in commentary was pretty excited when that goal went in, but that was a good match actually against Bosnia, who might surprise a few going forward. And then again we had Ivory Coast and Japan, just seeing the impact that Didier Drogba had when he came on the pitch. I think I commented at the time that it was almost spiritual. They just lifted, the crowd lifted, everyone did when he came on, and they've been the highlights for me so far.
It was quite amazing in that match. You see when Drogba comes onto the field, the 2 goals Ivory Coast scored are pretty soon after that. So as you say, he's almost that figure at Ivory Coast that just lifts the team. It's a bit surprising to see him starting on the bench, but I guess if he's going to come on and have that sort of impact, then that might be what they do going forward.
Yeah, it was surprising, but I mean, you've got Wilfred Bonny there, who's not a bad striker himself, and Drogba, he's getting old a bit. He's not the player he used to be, but as you say, and as we saw when he came on, they just went up a gear.
And how about yourself, Cooksen? What were your highlights?
Well, again, with the Netherlands v Spain game, it's just the complete and utter annihilation of tiki-taka and beautiful tactics by Louis van Gaal. And of course, Van Persie's header, which was, I nearly went the full Bruce like Rioli. Just superb. And probably seeing Fellaini's majestic afro bob up and down when he moves. It's just an act of beauty. And on hairstyles, we had the most wonderful comb over, highlighted by a referee. It was just superb.
Which match was that?
Korea-Russia.
Korea-Russia, right.
Korea.
I mean, it would have been surprising to see Fellaini as the first name on the score sheet for Belgium after the season he's had. I don't think he's scored a goal since he was at Everton, actually.
Yep, he scored 3 goals this season, none for United.
My highlight's probably Marquisio's strike against England, not only because it was an absolutely stunning strike, but also because Pirlo's dummy to leave the ball for Marquisio was just brilliant vision, and I guess that's what we've come to expect from Pirlo.
Yeah, well, he's Italy's best player, clearly, and if they're going to make a run in the tournament, then they're going to need him firing and playing the way he did against England, because he controls the match, he controls the tempo, he sets up goals, sets up chances, so he's their most pivotal figure without doubt.
And I guess the other highlight for me was the Mexican keeper Ochoa with an outstanding display this morning against Brazil. That save from Neymar's header was outstanding.
It's brick at the wall, and he's had some really solid form in this. I mean, there was a French game where he faced PSG, 1-0, PSG had a ridiculous high number of shots, and he saved them all. And he's a free agent too, so that's his agent's phone call will be the busiest phone in the world right now.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, the brilliant thing about the World Cup is it always seems to engineer moves for players that maybe haven't caught the eye of bigger clubs, but after the World Cup, performing on the big stage, you might see it with some of our very own, Matthew Leckie, that sort of player who suddenly leaps into the eye of the bigger clubs and could actually engineer a move. I know, for instance, Taggart has attracted interest from Fulham, and he didn't even play for us.
Yeah, well, I'd love to see some of these guys, for me, in the Premier League, because that's obviously the league that I watch, and the league that most of us watch all the time. So that's something to look at come the end of the cup.
Yeah, and so I guess on the topic of Mexico, we'll have a look at Group A as the first of a couple of groups that we'll highlight as having had a few interesting results. With that draw against Mexico, where do you guys see Brazil's chances of progressing from here? Do you think this damages it at all? Do you think they're a chance of coming second, or will they still probably run out group winners?
They'll probably still be group winners. I mean, they got far too much quality up front with Neymar, Oscar, Bernard. They might need to do a bit of changing though, because Fred was just terrible, and I probably do see. Well, Croatia versus Mexico will be interesting, but yeah, it's Brazil or Croatia or Mexico. Cameroon are probably out of the World Cup in my opinion.
Yeah, despite their performance last night, I still think they're the favourites. I tipped them at the start, and I'd be surprised if they didn't top the group, and I'd be surprised if Mexico didn't go through with them.
And speaking of surprising results, probably the most surprising so far would have been the Netherlands' demolition of Spain 5-1 in Group B, which has absolutely blown the group wide open, because I think now you could say that Chile have a real shot at progressing at the expense, believe it or not, of Spain.
It would be pretty incredible. I certainly didn't pick that result going in. I thought Spain, there are a few question marks over them going in, but I still thought they were, they're still a force to be reckoned with, and they still are. But, they're in a pretty perilous position at the moment, because they more or less need to win both of their remaining games to get through. And, we saw the way Chile pretty much tore us apart in the first 20 minutes of our match, so they're not going to be an easy opponent.
Well, the worrying thing is that I think initially we would have looked at the fixtures and said, it's great having Spain last because they'll rest a few players against us having already topped the group, and that's gone right out the window. So they'll be going at us with, the foot to the throat almost.
I reckon it's Spain. They won't play Xavi or Xabi Alonso. They'll go put Koke in. They'll play Mada, Cazorla, probably Costa. They will go for the younger players against us, because I reckon Spain might be a bit scared of our running. As bizarre as it sounds, but we have a lot of pace, and I think we could run right through them if we know what we're doing.
Well, I think it is interesting. I think Ange has selected a side with a lot of pace in it, which obviously was very noticeable later on in the game against Chile, when you had Lecky and Orr down the wings, really taking advantage of the slower pace of Chile. And I think in Ange's own words, whenever Lecky got the ball, Chile shat themselves.
Lecky was awesome. I mean, just the drive he gave the team in the second half, that would scare anyone. So, yeah, I think you might be right there, Cooksen.
So how do you guys see us lining up against the Netherlands? Because obviously, at the time of recording, Netherlands-Australia will be tonight. By the time people are listening to it, the game will have been played. But how do you guys see us lining up, and what sort of chance do you give us?
4-3-3 with, again, pretty much the same team versus Chile. Substitute, put in McGowan instead of Franic, and hopefully Holland instead of Milligan, who's out injured this morning, which is kind of shit, as we kind of would be playing with realistically 2 centre-backs, 2 holding midfielders, then just bombing down the rings as much as possible. And probably interesting matchup, I would say, is probably Ian Robin versus Davidson, who will need to be on top form as possible.
He'll have to have the game of his life.
Yep, and we must do all that we can to nullify Robin van Persie, but I've been reading some Dutch papers, listening to Louis van Gaal speak, and he says what he likes is our pace and our youth, and a lot of Dutch papers are being really positive about the soccer, saying, they're coachable players, they're interactive, they're adaptable, so I think the Dutch do respect us, and they will offer us a lot of leniency. I expect it to be 3-1 to the Netherlands, with Van Persie getting 2, Ian Robin getting 1 goal, but I reckon we'll put ourselves in some glory here.
Yeah, I don't think we'll be disgraced, even though on paper the match has that potential. But I think 3-1, 3-0, something like that is probably what the scoreline's going to end up.
And speaking of the injuries we've suffered, do you guys think it's at all perhaps linked to the more intensive training regime we had going into the World Cup? I mean, I heard some comments about it from the point of view that yes, it was great of Ange to get the players incredibly fit for the opening game against Chile, but he perhaps maybe trained them a little too much in terms of the soft tissue injuries we've now seen with Franjic and Milligan.
Milligan's could have been a cause. I'm not really seeing Franjic as being one, because his was more of an impact soft tissue one, because he landed awkwardly. So
yeah, I think with these types of things as well, you'd sort of expect them to happen towards, the end of the World Cup, or at least the end of this week. I'd say for the first game, regardless of sort of what training regime you've been doing, you should be up and about, I would have thought.
Yeah. We have not been helped with injury as the Soccer Resist World Cup campaign. We'll put it mildly that way.
Yeah, that's true.
Moving on maybe to Group D, which was also an interesting one with Italy getting over the top of England. England-Uruguay is pretty much a do-or-die game for both sides after Uruguay suffered a surprise defeat of their own to Costa Rica. How do you see England lining up against Uruguay? I mean, obviously there's the great attraction of seeing Suarez playing against a lot of his Liverpool teammates.
I expect Rooney to be either played as a number 10 or not at all, because, he's not a winger. Rooney does run around, he does help out in defence, but he played wing for Manchester United. It was well over 6 years ago, where he had a lot more pace to burn. He's still fast, mind you, but yeah, I expect Sterling and Sturridge up front, Sterling on a wing. Not sure who will be on the other wing, because they probably will drop Welbeck. Mm-hmm. Liverpool, Uruguay don't really have if you play Welbeck on the wing, realistically you want to use him to man-mark the deep midfielder who plays a lot, and I don't see Uruguay having that. I'll probably go 3 in the middle, with Rooney, I might, Gerrard with either Wilshere or Henderson. And yeah, that's probably it really.
Yeah, I think if Danny Welbeck plays, he's a pretty lucky man, because despite he has a lot of good points, and he'll run all day and track back and all that sort of thing. But I just, again, similar to Rooney, he doesn't really.
He's not a winger.
He's not a winger. He shouldn't be out there. So I would expect Rooney to start in the middle, and Sterling with one of either Lallana or Oxlade-Chamberlain out on the other wings. And I actually think they should stick with their 4-2-3-1 formation. And so I didn't think they played too badly against Italy, but they just need to sort of capitalise on the chances they create a bit more in their final third. And I think they're a good chance of betting Uruguay.
And the final group I wanted to have a look at, I suppose, is to some considered the group of death, is Portugal, Germany, Ghana, and the USA. With Portugal's thrashing at the hands of Germany and Pepe's foolish red card, do you guys see the USA as a side that could now potentially make it through to the knockouts?
Definitely.
Yep.
They're a massive shot at getting through now, because you look at Portugal, they've lost Pepe due to the red card. I'm not sure how many matches he's going to miss, but it'll be at least one. Then you've got Cohen Trao, who's out for the rest of the cup, injured. So they're vulnerable at the moment, and I think, you'd probably still favour them to get through, but, you wouldn't rule the USA out.
Yeah, pretty much my point's exactly. USA are well ahead. They've beat Ghana with a very late goal, with Dempsey getting a very quick goal and becoming another player to score at 3 straight World Cups. Anyu put a beautiful finish, in my opinion, for Ghana. Late goal for the USA, which caused worldwide American patriotism to increase. But then we have Portugal, who just, for lack of a better word, they were just pathetic. Just Ronaldo, as good as he is, man, he dragged that country kicking and screaming into a World Cup, and it's just, there's only so much he can do with the world by himself. He just needs some help. So maybe he should drop back deeper, be more involved with the build-up play, because, their second best player was Nani, who has quite literally spent most of last season for United in a hospital bed. So, it's just...
Well, it does say a lot, and I think there was a passage towards the end of the first half where Nani and Cohen Trao, I think it was, ran into each other going for the ball. And you can just tell that a team's really shot to pieces when there's no communication between the players like that.
Yeah, it all fell apart for them really, and Pepe's red card, that incident was just one of the most absurd, ridiculous things I'd ever seen. With Muller going down, acting like he'd been shot, and then Pepe coming over saying, "Get up, mate," and then proceeds to headbutt him and get sent off. So it was pretty comical, but yeah, they've got a bit of work to do if they want to qualify.
It was quite funny. I had a Real Madrid friend on Facebook went online waving the flag for Pepe, saying it was such an outrageous red card, thinking he'd been given the red card for the initial foul, but it was quite obvious. I mean, the ref saw the foul and waved play on, and Pepe clearly just took matters into his own hand, as he seems to do.
It's Pepe though. It's kind of funny seeing him get sent off, because let's say he is a giant wanker. That's putting it lightly, but I'm also impressed by Germany, because I backed Müller to be top scorer, so get in, Cooksen. But just had wonderful quality all around the park. I mean, centre-backs are a good pairing with Hummels and Mertesacker. They have I probably would rather see Lahm at right back, but again, with the Schweinsteiger not being 100% fit, it's a good move for Germany. Got Özil, Podolski, got Goetze, who I thought played pretty well. And, of course, hopefully Miroslav Klose hopefully he can score a goal to equal the record of Ronaldo.
And going back to your point, Flameboy, I think it was, no, actually, I think it might have been Cooksen, about Dempsey becoming another player to score at 3 World Cups. We've had a couple at this World Cup already, and with Robin joining that company, the point was made that he was the first Dutch player to do so, and it was seen as quite an achievement. And very next game, our own Timmy Cahill joined the illustrious company as well. And you think the Netherlands are a team that go to a lot of World Cups. They progress quite fast, so there's a lot of opportunity for players to score goals in that regard. But for us, with only a handful of World Cup goals, for Cahill to have scored at all 3 is quite impressive, I think, and is definitely something to be highlighted.
Yep. Because, I mean, you look at some of the names he was with when he did that. I mean, we'll just read through the names as posted by Gibbsy on the board. Is a player called Batistuta, Diego Maradona, Ronaldo, Beckham, Platini, Klinsmann, Rummenigge, Mateus, Baggio. So we also have Park Ji-sung, Fernando Hierro, Rahul, Henrik Larsson. I mean, there are some pretty good players in history who haven't even scored at any World Cups, like, say, Van Basten and Cruyff come to mind. So it's a very elite group of players, and well done to Timmy.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's quite outstanding. I think I made the observation in one of the threads about it that for a player that it kind of strikes you as a midfield sort of player, but for both Everton and the Socceroos, he's spent the majority of his career as a striker for one reason or another, and he's got the goals on the board to go with it.
His heading ability, I mean, I'm tempted to say second to none, because it's just every time the ball's in the air, aerially, he's a threat. It's that simple.
Yeah, I mean, the Dutch, I've read some Dutch papers and spoke to them and some Dutch people, and they're like saying they're scared of Timmy because his leaping is just, he times his jumps so wonderfully. And also in that case, would we make the status that Timmy Cahill is the greatest Socceroo of all time?
Yes.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, Kuhl perhaps has the technical ability that Cahill doesn't necessarily have, but Cahill's just had such a strong impact for the Socceroos on a national level that it's hard to go past him.
Yeah. I mean, Kuhl was probably the better player in terms of technique, and, well, he definitely was a better player, but Cahill just, like, all the moments of World Cup history involving Australia has kind of had Timmy after the Uruguay in 05. I mean, he's scored twice, beat Japan, scored in South Africa, and now it's
Serbia.
Yeah.
That match was actually on this morning, and I was watching the replay of it, and I'd almost, because you remember the Holman goal so well from that game that you almost forget that it was actually Cahill who opened the scoring for us. And yeah, as you say, it's just he's been involved in both our wins at the World Cup, if you put it like that, and he's just an outstanding player for us.
Yep, and again, this World Cup, scoring our only goal against Chile, so He's definitely the best player we've had, I think.
So, I mean, apart from the Australia against Netherlands and England against Uruguay, what other games this round of fixtures are you guys looking forward to most of all?
Chile versus Spain, that could be a very spicy contest, to put it that way. I mean, Spain have to react. They must go for attack, they must go for their younger players, and we might see a second generation of tiki-taka, or tiki-taka will be dead. So, well, to quote Bruce, it's a very delicious contest, this.
And then, how do you guys see Belgium after their less than impressive performance against Algeria? You put it down to nerves, inexperience. How do you reckon they're going to bounce back from that?
I was just going to say, the other match I'm finding particularly interesting is Belgium v Russia, because Russia are no bugs, and I think Belgium, if they want to be taken as anything of a serious contender, they're going to need to play better than the way they played in the morning, because, as you said, they were nervous. I don't think they created a chance in the first 20 or 30 minutes of the match, so yeah, they're going to need to improve. If they do, they're a bit of a dark horse, joker in the pack, but yeah, I mean, maybe, who knows, they could get to the quarterfinals and anything could happen, but they're going to need to improve on what they showed last night.
Just Belgium's team, though, it seems so different from how they had in qualification. I mean, Fellaini usually played in qualification, and he was very good for Belgium. And instead of having Morales, they picked Chadley. He was just terrible. But it seems so different for Belgium. Like, I reckon they have the talent. Wilmots just went really bad with his team selection, and they're really hurted by having, again, Vertonghen and some other guy as their fullbacks when they're centre-backs. So,
I was going to say, I mean, that was the thing that really surprised me. Was it Vermeulen was the other one? Or was it Vertonghen?
No, it was Alderweireld.
Alderweireld, yeah. It was quite surprising that they basically lined up with 4 centre-backs, because they're going to get exposed for pace in that. And, I mean, Vertonghen performs well in the Premier League. And you saw him struggle when he was moved to right back, I believe it was, when the Spurs right back who got injured and he had to move to cover. Was it left back and he covered for Rose, I think. And you could just see that he was struggling a little bit when he was out wide.
Oh, he's not a fullback. It's that simple.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he can do a job there, but I mean, you saw him. Yeah, he was the one that gave away the penalty. Now.
Yes, as I'm well aware because of my fantasy side.
Yeah, so actually if you look at, I'm not going to have a go at them here, but one of the reasons, or you look at the common thread as to why Belgium played poorly, Tottenham. Chadley did nothing. Dembele, not sure if he was on the pitch, and Vertonghen gives away a penalty, so Spurs not doing too well there.
It's just a pity we don't have our very own Cruyff on the show, because I'm sure he'd be more than happy to dig the heel into the Spurs players. But on the topic of the Premier League, as we record, the fixtures have been released, and I'm sorry to say to Flameboy and myself, I think probably our worst possible fixtures have come up for us, with Chelsea away to Burnley on the opening day and Hull away to QPR, with Man United at home to Swansea as well, to round out the teams that our panel are facing. Some would argue that you're picking a promoted club as they've come into the league. They might not have the tempo of the game down pat, and it's a good time to get them. But I'm of the opinion that that's when they're full of confidence. They're at home against a bigger club. I mean, more so in Chelsea's case than necessarily Hull's. But it's probably not a great time to get a promoted club.
Yep. I'm just looking at our first 5 games, and I'm thinking, Louis van Gaal, I reckon we've got a pretty easy run with Swansea City home, Sunderland away, Burnley away, Queen's Park Rangers home, and Leicester away. So Van Gaal will have
Leicester and easy beats. That'll be fine.
Yeah. Van Gaal will have a nice, easy run to implement his tactics and his formations, which he'll do. And again, our last 5 are also pretty decent run with Everton away, the Baggies at home, Crystal Palace away, Arsenal home, and Hull City away.
That'll be the duel for the title, won't it, Cooksen? Winner takes the title.
Never know.
How about Chelsea? I mean, what's Chelsea's start look like? I think you've got the 2 promoted clubs first up, Flameboy. You've got Burnley and Leicester.
We do. We got Burnley away, so I mean, I'm not going to pencil in a win yet, but hopefully. And then Leicester at home, which will be a big match, obviously, with Jats and his Foxes back up to the Premier League. So looking forward to that.
Yeah, we've got to give him a shout out. Maybe not as easy beats as I'm making him out to be, but we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. And then after that, we've got Everton away, Swansea at home, and just looking down, Manchester City away. So that's the first real big game for us this season. But yeah, pretty easy start. Everton away, City away in the first 5. Maybe not so much, but certainly we should be getting off the winning start, I would hope.
Yes, you'd hope so. And on that note, I think we'll wrap it up for this week. Thanks to both of you for joining me, and a shout out to our very own Ned, who couldn't make it along because he's watching his Fargo finale, so I hope he enjoys that in Cruyff. And I'll see you guys next week, I think. And until then, to the rest of you, thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the forums.
We are fighters, we are warriors, we were born to win this game. No compassion, feel the passion, running faster through our veins. Feel the love of the